Doing my thing. I like to talk about some games and some life stories and do some skits and sketches. And today I wanted to talk about Fire Emblem Three Hopes, as that's approaching its release pretty soon now. We're in the month that it is actually releasing, and I've been thinking a lot about why Shez being here is going to make things so drastically different from Byleth. And of course, when three houses used different timelines and Byleth made different choices, they went with entirely different world states. So we can already guarantee that this isn't just the fact that Shez is alive. There are more things that are out of reach, just making these completely different timelines. But some things will be changed simply because Shez is here. I want to focus on what it is about Shez that will make those happen, and specifically the huge and long-running theory that there will in fact be a fourth route that is a golden route, and why Shez being here is what was going to make that happen, when that wasn't something that was possible with Byleth as the lead character. And I think the most effective way to tackle that is to look at what Shez has that Byleth doesn't. What does Shez offer that Byleth can't? And that's personality. Okay. That seems really harsh, and I'm sorry for the Byleth fans out there. But I am largely serious about it. I'm not... Right, like post-release, we got a lot of information on Byleth. Male Byleth likes to find lost items. Female Byleth likes to fish. Both actually like both, but one talks about one more, the other talks about the other more. These are just quirks and traits Byleth has in any route, but for the most part, Byleth's personality was actually determined by which path you took. That's because Byleth lived as a golem for years, and Golem Byleth did not have real emotion or friends or bonds except for Geralt. And when you play the game and you pick your route, Byleth will be following one of the lead lords, or leading them as the teacher, but following their example for who to be. It's pretty interesting. You can look at any of the four routes and dissect Byleth and see how Byleth is different in that route and how the lord of that house has rubbed off on the character. But in a way, I think that makes Byleth the perfect person to bring about war, which is ironic and kind of poetic because from before Byleth's origin, there were wars surrounding Sothis and the progenitor god and all that stuff. But when Byleth is born, Byleth might be one of the biggest agents in going back to war. So maybe some irony there. And when I'm saying Byleth is an enabler, I don't mean that. I don't mean that to point fault to Byleth or even pretend that's all that they are. I mean, Dimitri's on these murderous rampages, but Byleth leads him to healing, not alone. I hate that the story acts like that happened alone. Rodrigue, to do if he's alive, any of the students that show up to save Dimitri despite how he's being, they all have a hand in it. But Byleth is definitely part of it, and that's great. But even that character is brought about by the things Dimitri values. The loyalty, the hard work, the empathy, the compassion. All of that is shown by Dimitri in Act 1, learned by Byleth, and then shown back to Dimitri in Act 2. Siding with Edelgard seems contradictory to that character, but that's because Byleth learns to value that strategic mindset and learns to see the world as something that you don't have all of the time to fix. You need to fix quickly. Byleth can't sit by and let those troubles persist, because that's what Byleth learns from Edelgard. That's true of all of the routes. I use those two because they're the most contradictory, but Byleth takes on personality traits and learns from the students. For that reason, Byleth can't really cut a route to peace. But Shez is coming in here with a defined personality, and sure, your friends shape you a bit. Everyone will change and adapt to the situations they're in and the friends that they make, but with Shez having more of an established character beforehand, I am confident in saying that Shez will be better, at least have more hope, more of a chance at carving that peace with that alone. But that is not my only reason, because another reason is that while Byleth joined these students as a leading figure and helped carve their psyches, Shez is coming on board as a student, or an equal this time. I think that's going to go a long way because it will alter how we're seen. It'll alter how we're seen and how our relationships and dealings with these lead characters are shown, because now we're not guiding them to do whatever they're doing, we're suggesting things, and in a really funny way, it seems like Byleth being the leader should take more control of their lives and lead them to peace. I think that Shez being their equal and having maybe a more formulative opinion of all of the classes and all of the characters will go a long way, will really help them out. That one I'm being more theoretical about because I also think that the fourth route will start when Shez has future knowledge and decides not to join any class, in which case that doesn't matter. But as it stands, I think that Shez being there as an equal instead of as a leader will actually put Shez in a position to respect all three ideologies more than Byleth ever did. More than Byleth did in any single route. Thirdly, Shez has ties to the Agarthans, and they're some of the biggest foes to the church. But Shez is working, or at least learning, in the church, so those ties are probably no bigger than Avarol. I don't think that Shez is a descendant of any of the characters or some sort of legendary hero to them. But while Byleth has Sothis and is an enemy to the Agarthans just based on that, Shez has this personal tie to them, and not one of war, not one like Edelgard where there are allies who will commit these sneaky acts together, but one of actually high standing. Because now Shez is tied to bringing someone that they care about back to life, whether they see that person as a god or a sibling or whatever it is. That can give Shez some sort of insight into the Agarthans in a way that nobody else has had before, but also making them someone that the Agarthans have no choice but to talk to, and at least somewhat listen to. I really think that blending together is really going to paint these stories of irony, like Byleth being the natural enemy to the Agarthans, of course leads to fighting. Us, now Shez being the natural ally, I guess, to the Agarthans, will still lead to some fighting, but cut a new path that can cause peace. Maybe peace with everyone except for the Agarthans, but I think Edelgard seeing that Shez can be an ally to the Agarthans, but Dimitri seeing that Shez can be an ally to the church and the kingdom, and Claude seeing that Shez can be an ally to stopping racism will really work together to make this formulative picture where all three House Lords can see that Shez is on their side despite where they came from, whereas for Byleth that wasn't ever the case. Byleth was mainly following one of the other lords, or just fighting for the church. But any of those are relatively one-dimensional. Not necessarily saying Byleth is, but Byleth's goals, summed down, kind of were. It also really feeds into a larger theme of the Agarthans playing like they're stronger than deities, and like they have all of the knowledge. So they make these big calls and these really risky moves, and they're their own downfall. That's something we see in a lot of fantasy games where nations get all of that power or that technology or whatever it is. People being their own downfall because they have too much power and too much ability. And I definitely do think that the Agarthans, at least as a whole, can go there. Except for maybe Cronia might be saved by the end because Byleth pled to Cronia for help, and even Byleth kind of wanted to help, it seems, when Byleth has a very strong personal vendetta against her. Shez not having that exact vendetta will probably be more likely to find a way to help. I would guess. I don't know. But that's kind of my point. I think that the way they're so willing to turn their back on their own, and then Edelgard is kind of working with them as not one of their own, and then Shez is sort of one of their own. I think it's all this can form these really weird bonds between everybody. The next thing that I think Shez has that Byleth doesn't is actually the opposite. I think it's something that Shez does not have. That's bias and excuses from Rhea. This is developing and continuing that theme of the ironic things, right? Like, Byleth having so much favor from Rhea should make it so that Byleth can foster peace. But maybe Shez being seen as lower and just like everyone else, or maybe even as a foe when some certain truths are brought to light, will make people like Dimitri see Rhea in a little bit more of that light that Edelgard sees her in. I'm not saying that Edelgard's completely right in her view of Rhea, but I'm also saying that Dimitri is definitely not completely right in his view. I think that if someone like Shez ends up with as much power as someone like Byleth, and even fighting Byleth, I think that will really mess with Rhea. But in a way that Dimitri can see and catch earlier on. And Claude, of course, is going to be suspicious of it, and Edelgard has already had all these things against her, and I think that those three, once again, there are all of these things that we can see they all align on. I mean, that's been true of Three Houses as well, but you can only uncover those truths in one route. But now for Shez, if Shez gets this power early enough, at least in the fourth route, I really think that that is a path to peace right there, and it will all come from the fact that Shez has no favor over Rhea, whereas Byleth did. And Rhea was always kinder and more lenient to Byleth, which led to certain things like when Byleth was teaching Edelgard's class. Even if Byleth chose to betray Rhea, she snapped right there and it was too late. It won't lead to things like Rhea sort of nonchalantly letting Byleth lead a class instantly without any knowledge, just because she knows who Byleth is and trusts Byleth. And the fifth thing that I think Shez has that Byleth doesn't is each other. Shez has Byleth, but Byleth doesn't have Shez. In Three Houses, you play as Byleth, and you have killed Shez a year before the game even starts. You don't even know who Shez is. They don't matter. They're just someone. And honestly, you can't even remember if that was a man or a woman. But in Three Hopes, you play as Shez, and Byleth is someone who you fought a year ago and you have thought about every day and trained every day to fight back against. But when the stakes really pick up, and you see that there is a lot more to this war and a lot more conflict going on than your grudge match with a certain mercenary, maybe in other routes things don't go the way we would want them to, but at least in a golden route, Shez will be able to lay down that blade and take Byleth back in as an equal, an ally, a helper, whatever it is. Byleth literally cannot do that because Shez is dead. So this is the first time that we will be able to see Shez and Byleth or Sothis and Navarro or whatever it is team up for something. Or maybe it will be more so Sothis, Byleth, and Shez versus Avarul, or Byleth and Shez fighting their weird mind beings. I hope not, because I like Sothis, but, maybe in a certain route she gets corrupted. I don't know. My point is that Byleth doesn't have a possible chance to work with Shez, but Shez has that chance to work with Byleth. And, what? And as I'm sure you know, teamwork makes the dream work. Teamwork matters. It's a big deal. So this is something that I am really excited to visit again in a few months, after the game is out, or if there's story-based DLC after the story-based DLC is out. When we have a full scope of Three Hopes, I want to look at this again and say, yeah, here are definitively the things that made Shez able to do this when Byleth couldn't. Because I think that a lot of people will be like, well, Byleth is great, I love Byleth, a lot of people love Byleth, so they're going to be upset that Byleth couldn't make the golden round. But I think if we take a step back and look at this from a certain standpoint, once we have all the information, because right now I'm being theoretical, but if we take a step back and look at it from a new standpoint, we can see that maybe Byleth just couldn't do it. Maybe there is something that is missing that Byleth can't make happen. If I am wrong about what they are, that will also be exciting. I definitely want to update this one, so stay tuned for that after the game is out. And other than that, I am glad to see everybody once again. Until next time, please take care.